I will share my screen. Okay. Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today we are going to talk about how to make your reporting more granular, your building of audiences a little more granular, and just basically various places where you can add in additional fields without any kind of customization, without ever having to necessarily contact us unless you just want to and you need us to help you out. But there's several places inside of the system that I don't think everybody's aware of that you can actually go in, you can add additional user fields. That one's probably pretty common. You might have probably heard about that one and you're probably using it. If you've been implemented by us recently, chances are good you're probably using that one. But I don't think a lot of people know that you can add in additional course fields. You can add in additional fields to your hierarchies, so into your positions and organizations, and you can actually add in additional fields into face-to-face. So I'm going to show you each of those different locations and where you might do that, and then use your imagination, guys. You can totally do a lot of cool stuff with your reports based on this stuff. A little bit about myself. My name is Taylor Craig. I am a platforms consultant here at Kineo, so I get to train all of our fantastic clients. I get to sometimes get the pleasure of going on site and seeing you, and then also do a lot of online training and work with our solution architects to make sure you're implemented and trained up on any customizations as well as core work that we may do for you. So that's my role here at Kineo. A little bit about office hours in case you're not aware. What we do inside of office hours, I do a 15, sometimes 20-minute presentation. For those of you who join me a lot, sometimes know I can get a little long-winded. But we do a feature presentation over any of our just core Totara features. So that's what we talk about typically. But then I open up the floor for about 45 minutes, however long you need me, to answer any questions that you have. They don't have to relate to the topic of the day. They can relate to anything that you're dealing with on your current site. And that particular part we don't post to YouTube. We post the 15-minute presentation to YouTube for anybody who needs it. But we don't do our client time to YouTube because we want you to be a client. Come join us. It's basically free training, guys, so come join us. So like I said, where can I add additional fields? Well, lots of different places. We can do this within a user's profile, so we can add these in there. There's lots of different types of custom fields, and I say custom fields in air quotes because for user fields, it's actually called custom fields inside the system, which is a little goofy, but I think that's a residual leftover of Moodle, and it was called custom fields in that system. So that's where that comes from. But it is actually a configuration. So we can talk a little bit about that. You can also do it in your default course settings. So you can add additional fields to your courses that are additional descriptors of those courses. You can also add these different fields when you add in position and organization types. We'll kind of talk about position and organization types at a high level today, but basically what those are doing is they're defining those positions down a little bit further, and they're defining those organizations down a little bit further. So that's what that's about. And then also face-to-face. You can add in additional fields into face-to-face, and you may add those in so that you can give your learners some additional information that they may need to know. Excuse me. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get out of this boring old PowerPoint and take a look at the real deal. Okay, so the first place where you can add these fields is going to be an administrative change, and it is underneath Site Administration. This does apply to all users, so it's going to apply to everybody. So if you're putting in something that's like a drop-down menu or something along those lines, then you want to make sure that you have a not applicable option for people who it may not apply to. So this is going to be underneath Users, Site Administration, Users, Accounts, and we're going to go to User Profile Fields. Again, this is going to be probably one of the more commonly used additional fields that you can put in there. You may hear somebody refer to them as custom profile fields. You've probably heard me refer to them. I've mentioned that. I use that in air quotes. You can build these. I've already got several in here. I've got department, new employee, are you a trainer, start date, state, employee status, years of service. And these are all different types of profile fields. So these are all the different types of profile fields you can put in. You can put in a checkbox, a date, time option, a drop-down menu, a text area, or a text input. Just so you know, text area, that's going to be a large area that's typically not populatable by a CSV file. So think like a description box type of thing. It's your text input box that you're looking for. That particular one is absolutely populatable by a CSV file. And a lot of times people like to use that for titles, things like that, stuff that they're pulling from an HRIS system that they need to push in and that they don't want the learners messing with or editing. Okay, so let me just show you really quickly what that looks like inside of a profile. So I'm going to open my profile over here, and I'm going to actually edit my profile and scroll to the bottom. This is going to place these inside of typically what it's called. It's actually called other fields by default. I have renamed the section to additional employee information just because it makes a little more sense if you look at it instead of other fields. And you'll see here I've got some drop-down menus. I have a date menu in here. I have a state, employee status. I'm none of those things at this point, so I don't qualify. Years of service, we're going 1 to 5 years here. Okay, so we've got these different types. Now, I wanted to point out also inside of these drop-downs, you've got one called checkbox. And a lot of times what people think that might be is where you have like 2 or 3 options that you can choose from, and then you can check the box on whichever one applies. That's not quite the case. It actually is going to look like this. See where I have just the word trainer and then I have a checkbox? It's really a yes or no. Okay, so just keep that in mind. There is an additional one that we can add in, then that is a customization, and it's called multi-select. So if you have a need for that, it's absolutely something we can do. We've done before. So we can add that in, and that's something that can be done. Okay, so this is going to be your user fields. They're pretty easy to add in. Just one little gotcha I want to point out is there's no like add button. Most of the places in Totara, you'll select something and then click add. You don't have to do that here. So you just select it, wait for a minute, brings you to the interface. Okay, so within this you put in a short name, all lowercase, all one word, your full name. That's what the learner's going to see or what you're going to see in the profile. The description, that's not going to be applicable necessarily unless you want a description for your other administrators explaining why in the world you put that profile field in. So that's really an administrative description. And then you have some other options here. Is the field required? Yes or no? Should it be locked? Yes or no? Locking means that learners cannot edit that. You as an administrator should be able to edit that, but they can't. Should the data be unique? Use your thinking cap before you use that one. Okay, display on sign-up page. That's going to be if you're allowing people to create their own accounts. So if you're using email-based self-registration, at that point you may want that to appear there. If you're not using email-based self-registration or you're not allowing users to create their own account, then that's not going to be necessary for you. Okay, who is the field visible to? You're going to choose it. Keep in mind, it is always visible to the administrator. So not visible, visible to user, and visible to everyone. That's what that's going to sound like. So everyone means anybody who can see and click on my name. That means I'm everyone at that point. And then if you have additional categories, if you've named those categories of profile fields, if you've named them and you have more than one, that's where you make the selection there. And then for this particular one, each of these different fields, they have their own custom selection area. Okay, so that's that one in a nutshell. Let's take a look at, I forgot what the next one was, course. Let's take a look at our course option. So that is again going to be underneath site administration. It's going to be under courses, and it is going to be under, it's in here somewhere, course, custom fields. There we go. That's another air quote, custom fields, okay, is configured fields, okay. So you can add in any additional field that you want to a course as well. This will allow you to sort reports based on those little things. So anywhere where you add in these additional fields, keep in mind that that becomes a filter inside of the reports, which is really cool because that means that you can filter those reports now based on that kind of information. You can also a lot of times add columns based on this information as well. Notice that you have these fields for courses. You also have these fields for programs and certifications if you need to identify any of those. It is going to work very, very similarly to how the other one worked, the user fields. You'll notice here, core for these, for course and stuff like that, multi-select is an available option. Okay, so let me show you a quick example of what that might look like. That is going to be down inside of a course. Again, this is going to apply to all courses. This is not going to apply to just some that you may want to use. It is going to apply to every single course on your site, so just be aware of that. I'm going to jump in here, edit the settings, show you where this is located. Again, it's going to be all the way down at the bottom. And you'll see here we've got drop-down menus, we have a fill in the blank, and this is what a multi-select will look like. We're able to give it a heading, and then we're able to put in all of the different options. So that's going to be your major difference between multi-select and that checkbox one we looked at a minute ago. That's going to be your major difference. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. These will also pull into what we call the enhanced catalog, guys, because remember, enhanced catalog, that is a report, okay? So that can be a filter, and you can allow your filter, and you can allow that catalog to work in that sense. So if we take a look, jump over here to our enhanced catalog, that's pulling all of that information from those course custom fields, air quote custom, okay? All right, so let's take a look at our next one. This is going to be in hierarchies. So you do have to define types in order to be able to add these custom fields within your hierarchy. So it's going to be underneath site administration, hierarchy, positions, and organizations. You're going to see the ability to manage types under both places. I'm going to use organizations because this is a easier way to explain it, kind of help people wrap their mind around what types are and why you might use them. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to add a new type, and I'm going to call this store type. That's the full name, it's what you'll see. Okay, you can put in a description as to why you're using it. Okay, so once you've built that, think kind of frameworks, because we've talked about frameworks before. You know that your positions and your organizations have to build, you have to have a framework. You have to have the same thing for types. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to call this store type, and I'm going to click on it. And now I can add a new custom field. So since we're using this for store types, an example might be that you may have owner-operated stores. You may have franchise stores. You may have a store that has a particular type of drive-through. You may have a store that basically just you need to describe your store in more detail, right? So this is a great way to do that, and it gives you the ability to filter. So adding in position types and organization types, basically it's additional descriptors, right? So what I can do now is I can come in here and I can say, let's use a multi-select. Okay, so I'm going to call this store type again. Short name must be unique. Choose if it's required, locked. A lot of this information is the same. You can put OO for owner-operated, F for franchise, and these are all the other options. If you don't fill them in, that's okay. It's not going to display them all weird. You can have a particular icon for each of them if you want to change that. And I'm going to go ahead and save my changes. So let me show you just really quickly where that's going to show up. So we did this underneath organization. I'm going to go back out to all types. Okay, you'll notice here that we have 77 organizations and none of them are classified. They're considered, quote, unclassified, meaning that we have not applied a type to any of our organizations. So I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to go in and manage my organization. I'm going to go to this company here. That's my main one. And I'm going to come in here to my store because remember, mine's based on a fast food organization. So we've got the company and our corporate people, our region, our district, and then these are all of our stores. So I'm going to jump in here to the one on Rice Boulevard. Now I see a type. And so I can change my type. And now I can choose the type. It's going to ask, do you want to reclassify this, meaning can it go from unclassified into that type? And yes, I do. And now I have the option to choose. Is it owner-operated, or is it franchise, or is it both? In this case, it's probably not going to be both. Okay, so I'm going to save that, and now I have a store type. Okay, so now inside of my reports, I can now pull that information, which is really nice and really handy for me. Okay, so really a nice feature that I don't think a lot of people use because they can't wrap their mind around it a lot of times. But it's kind of handy. It comes in good if you're needing that additional layer of something to sort on. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Let's take a look at the last one. And this one's going to be underneath plugins. This is going to be adding additional fields for face-to-face. So it's going to be underneath plugins. We are going to go to activity modules, face-to-face, and we're going to go, again, air quotes custom. And we've got sessions, our sign-up notes. If you've used face-to-face in 2.7, you'll be aware that there is now what we call a sign-up note area and then also a cancellation note area. You can add in different types of fields there as well. So you can add in different types of fields. You can choose what type they are, all that good jazz. So if you think your sign-up note is kind of weird, that it's just one little small text field, you can go in here and you can change it to be something else. And you can also have it, instead of saying sign-up note, you can maybe give a little more explanation. So you can make that change. But then you can also change additional things that are available in sessions. Again, this is going to apply to every single session throughout the site. So just keep that in mind. But we've got these different options as well. It's going to work exactly the same way. One thing that I see people do as far as face-to-face is concerned, I've seen several people go in and they will add in a drop-down menu indicating who the person is that will be leading that ILT. So saying that Susan's going to be leading it this week or Justin's going to be leading it this week. Okay, so that's something that I've seen many people do. Again, now that doesn't give those people control over that session. It is simply a descriptor. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So hot dog, I did that under 20 minutes. I was afraid that I was going to go over because there was quite a lot to talk about. But I am now going to turn the floor over to you. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this was helpful. Lots of different places where you can define stuff. And I look forward to hearing your questions. So how can I help you today, hopefully?